Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about what is a good zero for your 9mm AR. Okay, so this is the Palmetto PX9 9mm AR. I got a whole bunch of these. They're great guns. One of the things I like about 9mm ARs is that you can shoot steel targets much closer than with 5.56. You don't destroy the steel targets. You don't have to worry about a piece of metal coming back and hitting you in the head. So it's a very practical training rifle. Okay, so now aside from being able to do a lot of CQB stuff, you can also take it out to longer distances. Okay, now in this video I want to talk to you guys about these zeros that I use. Normally I have it set for a 50-yard zero. Okay, the reason why I use a 50-yard zero is because inside of 75 yards the point of aim, point of impact is very similar to an AR-15 with, shooting a 5.56. Okay. The problem is once you get out to 100 yards, okay, at 100 yards, if you're using a 50-yard zero on your 9mm AR, you put your bullseye, you put your dot in the middle of the bullseye here, and your bullets are going to impact about 3 to 4 inches low, okay, which is fine. You're still on the paper, but then if you want to go out a little bit further, you go to 150 yards. Now basically the impact in here, so you have to pretty much put your red dot someplace up here in order to impact the paper in the center. Okay, so what I do is when I know I'm going to be shooting at distances, right? When I got a 50-yard zero, right, where my zero is right here in the center, right? What I do is I adjust 10 clicks up. Okay, so with my Holosun 510C, right, which has the half MOA adjustments, I basically do 10 clicks up, which is going to move it 5 inches up, right? And what that does, instead of my bullets impacting here, okay, they're going to impact up here. So basically it moves me about 5 inches up, right? And my point of impact at 100 yards, okay, is about 3 inches above my bullseye. Now, if you have an AR-15 that has a 50-yard zero, a 50-yard first zero at 50 yards, your far zero at 200 yards, at 100 yards, you're also going to impact 3 to 4 inches high. So what this does is at those distances of 100 yards, the point of aim, point of impact is similar to if you were using a 5.56. So that has a very good training value in that respect. If that's the distance you're going to be shooting, basically if you got the 50-yard zero, you just adjust what I say, 10 clicks up, right, which is going to move you 5 inches up from here to here, and now you're hitting 3 inches high. Now what's that gonna do for you at 50 yards? Right, at 50 yards, that's basically these. By the way, it is very windy today, so it was pushing all my bullets to the left. So at 50 yard zero, that's these 3 circles right here, right? I have the 50 right in the center, right? So at 50 yards, you're going to be 4 inches high, okay? Is it 4 inches? 3.5 inches. You're going to be 3.5 inches high at 50 yards. At 20 yards, which is these 3 shots here that I've made a triangle of, at 50 yards, you're going to be 1.5 inches high. Now, to me, this type of a zero also works because, okay, so let's say at 50 yards, which is going to be kind of like your high point here, you're 3.5 inches high. So if you're aiming here, you're going to basically be hitting up here, right? So the nice thing about using an AR, right, with a 50-yard zero is from zero distance all the way out to 250 yards, right? If you put the dot in the center, you're either going to be like 3 inches low or 3 inches high. So you can just put your dot in the middle and you can still get a headshot from zero distance all the way out to 250 yards. Now, past 250 yards, if all you have is a red dot, chances are you're not going to be able to see ahead. All right. At that point you need magnification. At that point you need better, well-aimed shots. Okay, but from that zero distance to 250 yards, there's a good chance that if in a realistic zombie apocalypse type of situation, you're going to be taking headshots because that's all you're going to see, right? You're going to see little heads poking out from behind the trees, or wherever your environment is, right? Behind garbage cans, or wherever it is that you happen to live. All you're going to be seeing is little heads. Okay, so you got to be able to hit the head. You put the dot in the center and know that, hey, if you're 3 inches low or 3 inches high, you're still going to get a good headshot. So using this zero, right, which is the way what I call this zero is plus 3 to 4 inches at 100 yards. And it doesn't really matter that much what the caliber is, okay? Whether I'm using an AK or a 5.56, it's all the same. At 100 yards, I want to be 3 to 4 inches high. Now with a 5.56, if I'm using a 55 grain bullet, I want to be 4 inches high. Okay, so that if I end up using a 65 grain, now instead of being 4 inches high, I'm going to be 3 inches high. So usually with the AR-15, I use I zero in with a 55 grain. So with the 50-yard zero, I'm 4 inches high at 100 yards, and then I get my second zero at 200 yards. Okay, now going back to the 9mm, using this zero, which is basically 3.5 inches high at 100 yards, the effectiveness, all right, as I mentioned earlier, if you're shooting at 20 yards, you're going to be 1.5 inches high. If you're shooting at 50 yards, you're going to be 3.5 inches high, which I think works just fine. Now, I also shot this at a steel plate at 145 yards. Okay, now at 145 yards, what I had to do is I had to hold 6 inches high, right? So it was a steel plate, it wasn't a paper, but basically this was the center of the plate. Basically I had to put my my dot up here about 6 inches high in order to impact the center of the steel, because basically the 9mm is going slower, so it drops fast. So if I had to guess, right, I would say that because remember at 20 yards I'm 1.5 inches high, so if I had to guess, I would say this is probably a 15-yard. First the near zero is at 15 yards, and the far zero, all right, where it's coming back down, because at 100 yards I'm 3.5 inches high, so the far zero is probably at about 120 yards. Okay, because at the 145 yards that I was shooting, I had to still hold 6 inches high. So the nice thing about this is that if you normally use a 50-yard zero with your 9mm AR, right? And if you want to adjust to this, you don't have to worry about, well, what did I get my near zero at? What did I get my far zero at? Oh, if you got a 50-yard zero, all you have to do is just go, click it up 10 times, right? Which will move you 5 inches up, which will get you at 3.5 inches high, and now you can shoot, probably all the way out to 150 yards and still be able to hit a box like this, right? So a box like this, if you put here on the bullseye, you're gonna be hitting down here somewhere. All right. What I would be doing is I'd be putting my bullseye up here so I can impact the center. And you can still get out to 200 yards, because at 200 yards, I know all I gotta do is go probably about that high. As far as your holdovers, what I find is that if you just have a dot, right, you can probably go up to about 12 inches above your target, right? So if you're looking at a head, you can probably go about 12 inches above your target and be consistent, right? And you can be consistently hold 12 inches above your target. If you find that you need to adjust more than 12 inches, then it becomes really hard to be consistent, because, it's possible to know what, when you're 12 inches above something, but it becomes a lot harder to know if you're 1.5 inches, if you're 1.5 feet or 2 feet or 2.5 feet, then that becomes a little bit harder to judge. Okay, so that's why I like this idea of this 3.5 inches high at 100 yards, so I can get all the way out to 200 yards, and basically, at best, I gotta test this out at at a different range, basically maybe go up to a foot high and still be able to get hits at 200 yards. And then we'll see what we can do beyond that. But the nice thing is that, it's easy to remember 10 clicks. So if I want to come back to the 50-yard zero, all I got to do is basically just click, basically just click down 10 times. And that's going to move me down 5 inches, which is going to bring me back to a 50-yard zero. This kind of gives you guys some insight as far as how I think about zeros. Because here's the thing, you might say, hey, you got an AR with a and you want to use a 50-yard zero, right? Well, how heavy is your bullet? Are you using a 55 grain? Are you using a 65 grain? Are you using a heavier bullet? How long is your barrel, right? Are you using a 20-inch barrel, or a 16, or maybe you got an AR pistol with a 7.5-inch barrel? So, when you say you want a 50-yard zero so that you can get a second zero at 200 yards, right, with a 5.56, the question is, how heavy is your bullet and how long is your barrel are gonna factor into this, right? You may not get that second zero at exactly where you want it. The apex, right, may not be exactly where you think it's going to be. So that's why when I think in terms of where do I want my zero, I tell myself, where do I want to be at 100 yards? Okay, where do I want to be at 100 yards? And the answer to that is I want to be at about 3.5 inches high, and then depending on whatever length AR I'm using, or if I'm using an AK, or if I'm using a 9mm, I'm going to get myself there. Okay, and what that does is it gives me the ability to just put the dot on my target all the way out to 250 yards. A lot of times, just to think about this for a second, a lot of times people with a 5.56, they use a 25-yard zero because then they get that second zero at 300 yards. Okay. And the problem with that is at 100 yards, you're going to be about 10 inches high, okay? So if you use a 25, 300-yard zero, right? I mean, great, maybe you can hit the target out to 300 yards, right? Because that's where it's going to cross back down. But at 100 yards, right, basically if you put your dot, remember, all you're going to see is the head, right? So if you put the dot here, you're 10 inches high, right? You're going to miss your target. So with a 25-yard zero, at 100 yards, you have to know that you got to aim low. You got to make those adjustments. The way I see it, right, in my line of thinking, most engagements happen inside of 200 yards, right? In fact, I believe the statistics, the wartime statistics, are that 80% of your engagements, with rifles, right, are 80% are inside of 100 yards, and then 90% are inside of 200 yards. Okay, so if you're concerning yourself with hitting something at 300 yards, you're talking about a really small percentage. You're talking about 10%. And here's the thing: that 10% isn't just because you can have distances that are further out. So I'm more concerned with the 80 and 90%, which is inside of 200 yards, than that at 300 yards. Now, at 300 yards, I mean, I don't know how good your eyes are, but it's kind of hard for me to even see ahead. So if somebody at 300 yards, if I got somebody behind a tree, right, chances are I'm not going to be able to see the head. At 300 yards, I'm either I pretty much need to see an entire body, right? And I'm pretty much, using the entire body as a target, okay? Now with the 50-yard zero, basically I put the dot on the head, which is going to impact, 10 inches low. And if a smaller target, right, if the target's only going to be a head, chances are I'm not going to see it. So that's why, logically to me, it makes more sense to concern myself more with being accurate inside of 200 yards than being accurate, at 300 yards plus. Okay, now that's not to say that you shouldn't also be concerned with that, but in my opinion, if you're going to be shooting 300 yards plus, you're probably going to want magnification, Okay, you're going to probably want a bullet drop compensator to help you out a little bit, right? So I wouldn't just, I would prefer not to be using just the standard of red dot. You know, red dot is great for CQB distances, right? It's also really good at medium distances, but at the further distances, you know, I would rather have something that has a bullet drop compensator, I think. In which case, in that case, I'd be using the reticle, right? Because like I have the ACSS reticles that you zero in at 100 yards, and then there's little marks underneath that tells you at what distances which mark you have to use. So that if I know I'm going to be shooting at those type of distances, I'd rather be using that type of a scope. So anyway, a couple of things for you guys to think about. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're not a member of the channel, subscribe. Hit the bell button so that you get notifications of new videos I put up, and make sure that you are subscribed to my Odyssey and Rumble channel. I'm especially Odyssey, because about 80% of my YouTube videos did manage to transfer over there. So to the Odyssey channel, and I'll put a link to that in the comments below to get you guys over there, because most of my videos did manage to transfer over there. Initially, I was having a hard time searching the videos to find the ones I wanted, but I think the search results have gotten a little bit better. So let me know how that's working out for you guys over there. You know, go over there, check out some of the videos over there. Let me know, you know, how well it's streaming, if it's working good, because this channel here on YouTube already has 2 strikes. One more strike and I'm gone. So you know, that's why I'm trying to not post videos that are gonna attract the wrong type of attention, at least until the strikes expire. I think it takes 9 days for them to expire. In some cases, what I'll do is I'll post some of these questionable videos here on YouTube, and what happens is they get, within 24 hours, they get copied over to the other platforms, which is great, because that's a big convenience for me. And then what I do is I delete them off of YouTube, and then they stay over there. Right? This way I don't have to risk the strikes, you know, getting this channel shut down here on YouTube. So thanks for watching. I'll talk to you all soon. By the way, we're back to the 20 degrees, freezing, snowing crap. It's been like snowing on and off today. I'll talk to you all soon.